Many thanks to the Destruction Squad, Clash from the servers, Sergeant Pepper's servers, Sea of Tools Cloud, Dallas, the Struggle Community, the Karma Crew servers, Dots, Designful, Friendly, a DayZ podcast, and the Settlement for making this video possible. The explosives of DayZ vary wildly from flimsy gas canister KOs to full-blown tactical nukes, so I'm going to be exposing the exact damage values and range of every explosive in DayZ, how not to waste your explosives by using them incorrectly, where to get them all, and run the numbers on the best explosives against players and bases. Starting with grenades, we're going to first look at the best in the game, which is the M67 or the American grenade. These are pretty easy to find in high tier military areas due to there being 15 on a server at once, and they have a 5-second fuse when thrown, dropped, or triggered by a tripwire. At 0 meters, this grenade does a huge 312.5 health damage to players, and it's got a maximum range of 20 meters, but it has a player kill zone of 14 meters for unprotected players, or 9 meters if you have the best explosive protection in the game. Grenades don't do any shock damage in DayZ, and nor can they make you bleed or break your legs, but because this grenade is exactly the same as the M79 grenade launcher explosive round, you can technically break somebody's leg due to the impact of the round on the player, but obviously they're going to be dead from the explosion. Also, if you didn't know, the grenade launcher explosive round has the exact same damage potential as the American grenade, which means they do exactly the same damage to structures, kind of. I say kind of because grenade launcher projectiles do 110 ballistic damage when they hit a surface, so technically the grenade launcher would do more damage than a pin grenade version, but we're just going to ignore this for simplicity. Against wooden panels then, both the American grenade and the M79 grenade launcher round do 2,650 damage, where against metal it's 1,750. However, explosives also damage the frame behind the panel, even if the panel is blocking that damage, which takes 1,000 damage exactly from both of these. The base structures of DayZ take this much damage from Russian grenades too, so all three of these grenades are exactly the same when it comes to damage, even though the Russian grenade is weaker against players, and the reason it's weaker is not due to its damage stats, but due to the range stats. It's due to the maximum range of the Russian version being 12 meters instead of 20 meters for the American. This means the Russian version can kill at 8 meters instead of a girthy 14 for the American, and with full explosive protection you can survive a blast at 5 meters. Strangely enough though, the Russian version spawns exactly as often in the same places as the American grenade, so if you have to choose between these two, the American version is far better. So the only explosive grenade that is going to be difficult to find is the M79 grenade launcher rounds, spawning half as often in the same locations, plus dynamic event military trains shown here in blue. Flashbangs are the most complicated explosive in DayZ, but also the most useless due to their poor damage stats of just 20 health at 0 meters, and how easy it is to avoid the worst effect of these, which is blindness. Between 0 and 5 meters, you're going to get 8 seconds of blindness and a 25% reduction in audio, with every 5 meters further away you are from this, reducing this time by 2 seconds up to 20 meters maximum. Beyond around 18 meters though, flashbangs basically have no effect against players apart from draining your stamina to 0, and because you can just look away to avoid the blindness, they're quite trash, and I'd only recommend using one if you have a squad mate that can cover you with a weapon. Against bases, they do 10% the damage of grenades, so they're going to be very bad against bases. You need 120 of these to destroy a fence or a gate, and while they do damage to infected and animals so you can potentially kill them, it's not much, and their blindness does not affect them. There's no special effects against infected or animals. The only perk of the flashbang versus explosive grenades then really is how grenades can be heard up to 1,600 meters away, where the flashbang can only be heard up to 150 meters, and smoke grenades are not much better, with 2 out of the 3 types of them only giving you 6 meters worth of smoke, so the American and Russian version are pretty much the same, with the M79 grenade launcher smoke round giving you around 50% more smoke at 9 meters of coverage. However, you need to judge wind direction before you position one of these, as this smoke screen will only sit on one side of where it lands, and on top of that, these rounds have massive deflection chances, so it's going to be very difficult to place exactly where you want it, making all smoke grenades kind of useless unless you use them in tight corridors. The most useful effect grenade by far is the Pox Vial or the M79 grenade launcher gas round, which are both exactly the same, but the M79 version does allow for more accurate deployment and allows you to mortar enemy positions too. On contact with most surfaces in the game, both will create a 6-meter radius gas cloud that has the exact same effect as static and dynamic gas zones, so all gas in DayZ is exactly the same, killing you in 1 minute and 15 seconds without NBC or the gas masker's protection if you stay within the gas during that time, and it will slowly drain the health of animals and infected over time, but it is pretty slow at killing these. Also, you cannot stack this effect even against AI, so throwing 2 grenades in the exact same location is a massive waste, and each cloud will last 6 minutes, which is guaranteed death for anybody inside that does not have protection. The gas does absolutely no damage to base structures, and the handheld version is extremely quiet, being heard at just 20 meters, where the M79 fired version is 500 meters, so they both have their perks, but both of them have a massive disadvantage, and that's rarity. To get the thrown version, you will need to go to the center of a dynamic gas zone. While that gas zone is active, they despawn when the gas goes away, so you need protection to get these. And the static gas zones of Chernobyl have the M79 version, where the bunker has both of these types on Livonia, and on Sakau you can get these much easier in these locations here, including the shipwreck. The low explosives of DayZ includes a fireworks launcher and the gas canisters, these blue ones, of which both of these are not very useful as explosives. The fireworks launcher does 2.6 damage per rocket to players if they're within 2 meters, and if you're within the same distance of a base wall, the fireworks launcher that is, will do this much damage over its full duration, so you need 38 fireworks launchers to break one wall. Because of this, they're best used as a distraction method for infected and players, being seen and heard up to 1,000 meters away, and likewise the gas canisters are best used for their intended purposes too. Against base walls, you will need 131 of either large, medium or small. They're all exactly the same when it comes to explosive damage, with their only redeeming quality being how much shock damage they do to players, which is 66 shock damage at 0 meters or when inside their inventory. This isn't enough to KO a player on its own. You need 75 shock damage, so you will need to do extra shock damage, but given that these explode inside our inventory, more often than not you will get that KO due to the shock damage of the initial attack. I showed you the flare gun as an example because the flare gun does no shock damage, so there's no KO here, but nearly all ballistics and melee attacks in DayZ do enough shock damage to get that one hit KO, so if you're carrying this inside your inventory, you can get KO'd in one hit because you don't know about explosives and how they explode inside your inventory. The other explosives that detonate inside our inventories are the M79 explosive and gas rounds, and also the landmine. As long as you carry these inside plate carrier pouches or inside containers inside your inventory, they will not explode. But if you do have these and you don't have a container to put them in, the next best place to put them is the backpack, because the damage transfer rates to the backpack is much lower than the chest or the pants. Landmines are the most unusual explosive in DayZ, as their damage isn't based on which body part is closest to the source of the explosion, so even if you gently kiss a landmine, it will do the exact same damage as stepping on one with high tier military boots. This is because landmines are coded to damage a random leg, so in the game files, when you hit that landmine with your body, it will damage your leg, then all body parts from the center of that leg will take damage, resulting in 60 health damage every time you touch one. Explosive protection can reduce this to just 30 health damage instead, so explosive protection is very useful against landmines, but there's absolutely no way to protect against the KO that comes with this landmine. This is so strange. It will KO players that are unprotected at 7 meters, it will KO players that are protected at 7 meters too, so regardless of your explosive shock protection, it pretty much means you're going to get KO'd if you're within 7 meters, making shock protection for explosives useless. You'll also need to be the person that steps on the landmine to get the leg break effect, so even if you're within 1 centimeter, your big toe is resting on the landmine, as long as you don't trigger that landmine with your body, it will not break your leg unless you trigger it by touch. You used to have a 90% chance to break your leg before bone damage was reintroduced to DayZ, and now it's a 100% chance if you trigger it with any of your body parts, because of how it drains your leg health to 0 on contact, and if your leg health gets too low, it will guaranteed break your leg. It also has a 50% chance to cause a bleed, which you can protect against. Explosive bleed protection can protect you from this, but it's the only explosive in DayZ that causes a bleed, so this stat is pretty useless too. Once triggered, it can be heard up to 1,600 meters away and will leave you unconscious for 50 seconds, and 50 seconds is enough time for anybody within 500 meters to sprint to you before you wake up, and because you also have a broken leg, you're pretty much a sitting duck to any player that has set up that landmine with the intention of finishing you off. You can use them in base raids if you're desperate. Make sure to not detonate them within 7 meters of yourself or you will knock yourself out and look like a dumbass, but they only do 1/3 the damage of a grenade, so it's a bit of a waste to use them this way. The best explosive for raiding by a huge margin is the plastic explosive though, doing a huge 7,000 damage to the frame, even if a panel is in front of it, and one-shotting a wooden panel with a monstrous 18,500 damage, which is the only scenario that you ever want to use a plastic explosive. This is simply down to their rarity. They are really hard to find and you need to find them in unique industrial areas on Chernobyl and Livonia, highlighted here, and on Tier 3 Industrial and the shipwreck on Sakau with the required remote detonator. This is the reason they're so hard to get, because you need a remote detonator which spawns at the same rate and in the same locations. Now you can waste these by killing players up to 20 meters away with a remote detonator trigger distance of 100 meters with both the claymore and the plastic explosive, but claymore mines are far better if you're looking to make a simple tripwire trap. I say this not only because claymores are a huge amount easier to find, all of these locations here, but because they only do 2,000 damage to the frames of structures. In other words, they do 2 grenades worth of damage, so they're pretty weak, I would say, compared to their explosive potential versus players, so they are best used against players in tripwire traps. This 2 grenades worth of damage applies to players too, but the claymore carries its damage much better over range. It can kill players up to 24 meters away, which is 10 meters further away than the American grenade. However, the kill zone of the claymore is set to 90 degrees though, so facing it towards a trap is an absolute must, and one of the best features of this explosive is how you can get a free remote detonator when you place this. So it's a claymore kit that gives you a remote detonator back, instantly killing anybody that's unlucky enough to trip this tripwire trap. Now it used to KO players that were behind it, so you no longer take any damage outside of this 90-degree damage zone. I don't know if this is a bug, which means you can Mike Tyson Giga Punch people, but for some reason it does not kill people in front of you now, even though it still does when it's ruined on the floor. Like the landmine, it's a waste to set this up and not be nearby to claim your loot, so because they can be up to 1,500 meters away, similar to the landmine, stay within this area to not waste your claymore mine and your metal wire from the tripwire trap. If you do choose to waste a plastic explosive in a tripwire trap, the sound could be heard up to 2,000 meters away. The loudest explosive in DayZ is the fuel pump at 3,000 meters away though, but the fuel pump will only do 40 health damage to players and a lot less damage to players inside vehicles, so don't believe this is going to be some sort of epic ambush. No, it's not. And that pretty much concludes explosives in DayZ. So if you watched this video and you watched my previous video on explosive damage and armor, you are now an explosive master of DayZ. You can find the stats in this video on this website here, link below, with each item having links to where it can be shown on the map too. For those that have been asking, this is Loot Finder 2.0, which is built into the map tool and it shows exactly where items spawn in DayZ. It's only available to members, but Loot Finder 1 is still free to use for everybody, and I'll keep both of these up to date. Don't forget to like this video if you did learn something. It took a huge amount of time to get all these numbers, and if you have any questions, you know what to do. I'll be down there with you. Thank you very much for watching, and have a good day.